Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the Fear and Greed Business podcast. And as always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform that you'll find on YouTube, on podcasts like this one, books, Instagram, and more. Canna, how have you been going? What have you seen this week?
Well, lovely to see you, Michael. So, as we all know, the cost of childcare is just astronomical. It puts huge pressure and stress on the family budget. And I work for myself. My partner works for himself, and he travels a lot for work, and he's about to hit a very busy period of being away a lot. So I'm on my own with 3 children, 2 large dogs that need to be walked a lot. And I've been juggling this on my own for a while, and the wheels are really starting to fall off. I was feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and I just had thought enough's enough. And guess what?
What?
We got an au pair.
Oh, really?
She has been with us for 1 week, but
And everything's okay at the moment?
so far, look, I've heard some great stories and I've heard some disasters. But
About her? Or
No, about other people who've tried the au pair
I
thing.
was going to say, this could be quite scandalous. I want to hear the disasters about your au pair.
Oh, there's some really good scandals I can share with you, but it has been great. So you pay them a certain amount of money that's pre-agreed per week. It's generally cash. It's like kind of sort of spending pocket money. And you feed them and they live in your house, but they in turn give you a certain agreed amount of hours. And just to have someone there helping me with the kids. So, I can bath the kids and she can help me clean up, or she can fold some laundry while I'm reading books to kids. Just that extra set of hands that actually, is a lot more economical than, more days at daycare or after school care and so forth. It's actually been a really great investment thus far, 1 week in, I will disclose, but a great solution for, a world where we don't have necessarily family close by, or that tribe, or that, I guess, village that we may have had, in previous decades.
And you said that obviously food and everything comes as part of that. Is it a board as well? Does she live with you?
She lives with us, yes. Yep. So people have sort of various arrangements, and it's basically up to you as to how you want to structure it. But I just thought I'd share this with me.
That's amazing.
Far, so good. And I sort of wonder, why didn't I do this ages ago? Because the wheels were falling off. I was exhausted. And also it's quite lonely when you're at home with kids and no other adult to sort of give you a second set of hands, or even just to have a laugh in the moment when you're tearing your hair out because of the tantrums and meltdowns and responsibilities.
And often traditional childcare arrangements don't work for everyone, for every family, particularly when you've got shift workers, anyone working unusual hours, and suddenly kind of traditional childcare doesn't really work, and school pickups and things as soon as kind of school is back. It's really, really hard to juggle all of that. So this actually sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so I'll keep you posted. Hopefully it'll be scandal-free in my home.
Is she good with the dogs?
She's great, and she actually has a large dog herself back at home. So she's actually finding the dogs that are helping with the homesickness. So it's working really nicely, touch wood.
Oh, that's fantastic. This is very much kind of heading in a different direction, but one day I think we should do an episode on pets.
Yes.
Because pets are really expensive.
Tell me about it.
It's just, we've been kind of going through our grocery bill and looking at can we reduce the number of meals that we feed our cats? And the answer is no, it would seem. But I think there would be some things we can discuss there about kind of pets and pet insurance and food, and kind of almost the factors that you need to consider before you get a pet. But if you've already got one, how you can actually make that a little bit more sustainable. That is not what we're going to be talking about today. We've kind of veered off in a very different direction. What we are going to talk today about is emergency money. We've talked about it before, putting money aside for, surprise, surprise, emergencies. That's why it's called emergency money. But today I really want to get into some of the specifics about it, kind of how much you need to have, when you can use it, what you should do with it when it's not being used, kind of do you just leave it sitting there? But I really want to get to some specifics, so I will kind of put you on the spot to give me some dollar figures. But before we do that, I do need to say that as you're listening, anything that we are talking about is general in nature. It's always general. It's never personal, investment, strategic, or product advice. It is purely for financial education purposes only.
That's right, Michael. We don't know anything about your personal financial situation, your goals, your deadlines, or even what your risk profile may be. So should anything be of interest to you, and you think, oh, should I be doing that for myself? Is this something that would be right for me to help me with my goals? That is when you must go and see a financial planner and ask them for personal advice based on your individual financial situation and your goals and dreams.
I think I need to clarify something. Just in case the RSPCA is listening, I do feed our cats the required amount of food. They are not neglected. They are very well cared for animals. On with the emergency money. I will put you on the spot right from the start here. How much should you aim for? This is money that you are keeping for an emergency, a real emergency, when you don't have the money to pay whatever it is that has suddenly cropped up out of nowhere. How much should you aim to have? Is there an ideal number that you can actually give me? Or is it something like
a magical calculation?
Yes, I love, you've mentioned magical calculations before. I think you've kind of held them up as something that I would like, but that you can't actually deliver. It is something like a multiple of your living expenses. So take your kind of home loan or your rent and your grocery bill and all of that, everything that you would need to spend for a week, and multiply it by 10. That's what I'm looking for.
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well,
there is a very...
The look on your faces then was like, maybe I'm about to actually get this magical calculation. No, that was very deceptive of you.
Sorry. Look, there is a very outdated formula, and I think it originates from Susie Ormsman from the US, where she used to say, and she may still say this, where it's 3 months worth of income. Mm-hmm. Now, no one can really answer my question when I query this. No one can actually say, well, is that before tax or after tax? Because they're two very different numbers if it's 3 months worth of income. It's the wrong answer. Everyone's emergency number is very, very different. So what I recommend you do is you look at your own individual situation, and you have to, there is a magic number, but it's your magic number. So you need to actually do the maths behind it. But I promise you, if you have a calculator, it will probably take you about 15, 20 minutes, absolute max. So, for example, may I use you as an example, Michael?
Oh, please. Yes,
Okay.
It feels like that is my purpose in life, to be used as an example in this podcast.
All right. So you would look at your situation and go, okay, Michael, I work for myself. So therefore, you don't have any, I highly doubt, sick leave, annual leave, long service leave, do you?
No.
Okay. So therefore, that would put you at greater, I guess, risk, and your number would potentially be bigger, because someone who's an employee has, 10 days of sick leave each year, and they can add up as well. So you can bank, 30 days worth of sick leave. They might have even some long service leave up their sleeve, or some annual leave. So they can kind of afford to take their number potentially slightly down. So you've got that additional risk and stress on your shoulders, and the cost of that is higher. You then look at things like, okay, well, you've got children. You've got 2 children and a wife. And you need to look, so you've got those additional responsibilities that you may be the primary income earner, the cost of that. You then look at, all right, what insurances do I already have in place? So I'm going to ask you a personal question, Michael.
Go on.
Do you have income protection?
I did. I do not anymore.
Okay, that's a podcast for another day and a lecture.
Yeah, I assumed that it was going to come with a lecture. It is for very good reason. It is because when I finished up a few years ago in my full-time role and went into essentially working for myself, and when we started Fear and Greed, our business podcast, and I started writing books, that there was no kind of fixed income. So it was not really possible to get income protection insurance because there wasn't the set income while those businesses were developing. The look on your face, once again, just it makes me feel like maybe this is something that I should be addressing.
I feel like we should be addressing this for everyone to hear, but we'll do this potentially in another podcast. So another thing you'd consider, okay, you've got, how many cats do you have?
2, which is coincidentally too many. But yes, 2.
And are those cats insured?
No.
Okay, no judgment. The next question is are they in good health?
Unfortunately, yes. No, sorry, I do love them. Huey and Stewie
You can definitely call the RSPCA on you now.
Yeah, no, they are much loved and valued members of the family, but they are in good health. They are uninsured, though.
They should really be featured on your Instagram account now. I think they're worthy of IG post.
Okay, right. I'm making notes, and now I'm adding do Instagram
Just to let the
posts
listeners know you
of cats.
do love your animals.
Yeah.
The next thing you'd think about, okay, well, we don't have insurance. What if something would happen to them? Is there some sort of self-insurance policy? You'd also be looking at your health and the health of your individual family members. You'd be looking at your situation. Do you have family members that live overseas, particularly elderly family members that live overseas, where if something were to suddenly happen, you might need to quickly jump on a plane, buy an airfare ticket, have some money for accommodation and have spending money. And also because you're taking time off work, potentially the loss of income in that time while you're traveling overseas for a family drama. So you've really got to look at the nuts and bolts of your personal life. What are the realistic risks that you are exposed to, and what are the cumulative cost of those risks? Now, you might add up that number and it might come to some extraordinary number that's just $150,000. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to have $150,000, but you can work down from that. And I always say to people, sometimes in life, bad things happen in three. So you might go, what are the top three worst and most expensive things that could happen simultaneously? And that can start to give you a clearer idea of how much emergency money you really need.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, use the example of someone who's self-employed, someone who's young, they might be living at home. They may have amazing staff benefits where they have income protection as part of their package. They have lots of annual leave accumulated, lots of sick leave accumulated. Their living expenses are quite low. They don't really have, rent and mortgage repayments. Their emergency money number is going to vary where for someone like myself, where both Tom and I are self-employed. So there's no annual leave, there's no sick leave. There's none of that to fall back on. For the record, we both have income protection, but we also have 3 children. We have childcare, we now have an au pair, we have grocery bills, we have mortgage repayments. So for something to go wrong, we really have a lot more at stake. So our emergency money number is, substantially higher than, say, a 22-year-old living at home that's, got a lot of cushion to fall back on. And of course, you would look at what emergency money you've already got and you can build it up from there to help you get it. And it's a working number that might be able to come down, it might be able to come up, and you will intuitively know what feels right because you will have a greater sense of comfort and ease.
But is that based on the assumption then that the worst happens, that everything goes catastrophically wrong at the same time and you are no longer A, able to work, and B, able to cover any expenses, plus you are hit with some abnormal expenses at the same time?
Are you trying to manifest disaster in your life?
This actually feels like, we've talked about manifesting before, and I suppose it can go both ways, can't it? That if you manifest good things, you could probably manifest bad things. In which case I need to apologize to my cats because it feels like I have definitely manifested some kind of bad karma for them. Sorry, guys.
Look, it always comes back down to your attitude. I am someone who very much believes in a positive mindset and, manifestation of positive things in life that serve value to other people. So I have emergency money. We have emergency money as a number, and I definitely don't take that mindset. If anything, that emergency money helps me sleep at night.
Yeah.
I feel very confident that if something disastrous or something challenging out of the blue would be thrown away, we would be okay. It's not going to mean that we're drowning in debt. It doesn't mean that we're leaning on other people to borrow money. It means we can quickly and easily quarantine the damage, it not jeopardize our future goals and dreams, and we can keep our head above water.
I suppose what I'm trying to find is there a way to make it more probably realistic and more attainable? Because talking about that, I actually found that quite daunting, what you were saying there in terms of all of those different elements to add into it and all of those expenses. Whereas I've always viewed emergency money more as being able to cover those expenses that come up that you are not expecting. Say, for example, we, like probably half the country, suffered storm damage last year. And we are insured, but the insurance doesn't cover some of the pre-existing kind of problems with the roof.
Problems,
yeah, indeed. So we have to fix those first before the insurance will cover the other damage to it. So that's okay. But it means that we have to essentially find up to $10,000 to fix this. That's what I've always thought, that emergency money was there to cover those unexpected bills. Part of me feels like when we're listing all of those other things that obviously you need to be able to cover your mortgage, you need to be able to cover your groceries, your school fees, for example, for your kids. If you get sick, suddenly it feels like you can't get by without having, say, $50,000 or $100,000 in the bank. And how is that attainable for an ordinary Joe like me?
Well, as I said, you list all of those things, and that forces you to have a good, hard, cold, realistic look at your situation. And this is the problem, that so many Australians simply do not have any emergency money, or do not have enough because they haven't worked that number out correctly.
Okay.
I read somewhere, and I can't quote where I read it, but the average Australian has about 3 to 3.5 weeks worth of living expenses in emergency money. So
Right.
I'm not telling someone you need to go and save $50,000.
Yeah.
But in doing that, and look, there might be things in there that you think, oh, that's highly unlikely that's going to happen. You can remove that from your list. And as I said, you look at all those things and then you work down from there. So you may, as I said, pick the top 3 most expensive things that could happen, and that's your emergency money number. So you might go, okay, insurance claim, $10,000. You might go having to have a month off work because of an illness. Okay, that's another $10,000. And then you might go, $5,000 for some sort of incident, that you have on your list. And you go, okay, all right. So I now know it's $25,000.
Okay.
And that's what feels right for you. And that's why I said it's very much an intuitive thing. You'll get to a point and go, well, that's unrealistic. And it's also an inefficient use of savings, because I don't want to go and save 50,000 or 150. You've got to use your intuition here as to what feels right for you.
It's getting to that point at which you are comfortable.
Yeah.
That should something happen, that you will be okay.
And you need to be realistic. Like, the whole point of, I guess, financial education is to stop burying your head in the sand, look at the cold, hard reality. Because I have seen so many situations where things have gone wrong and people didn't have emergency money, or they didn't have enough emergency money. And they've ended up undoing all the hard work of their savings, their investing, their debt reduction, to then actually end it back up at square one because they simply didn't have enough emergency money. And you would hate to be in a situation where something happens and then you're having to sell off those shares or make a claim in your superannuation to get some money out for a financial hardship and having to pay a large amount of tax on that.
Yeah.
So I would rather the truth hurts, is probably what is happening for you right now.
Yeah.
But it's for your own well-being and your own protection. And it's better to know this. And if you go, that's fine, I know that all these things actually should really mean that my emergency money should be 50, but I'm choosing to make it 30 or 35, that's fine. At least you're aware, rather than being ignorant and naive, thinking, oh, I've got plenty of emergency money. Because when an emergency hits, it can really come out of nowhere. And
you don't have time.
Exactly. And I shared another previous podcast, when I was giving birth, literally in the birthing suite, we discovered that I wasn't covered under private health insurance. So I had to give birth as a public patient in a private hospital.
That makes me feel less bad about not having my income protection insurance now. I feel like we're on a level playing field.
Exactly. Yeah. We all make mistakes. And then also I got scammed on Gumtree that week as well.
Yep.
And then something else happened that was a couple of $1,000s as well. So
that was your 3.
That was my 3.
Yeah.
And Tom did want to kill me for missing this, but we had emergency money, so it was annoying to tap into. But we were able to, it didn't create a huge drama in our lives. We were able to pick up the pieces and get back on again.
All right. We are going to take a very quick break. We will come back in a second, and I will ask you the question that I'm sure, well, I certainly want to know, I'm sure others want to know, is if you don't have this emergency money, how do you get it? Where does it come from? How can you start actually building this up? So we'll enter that one in just a moment. Okay, Kana, we're talking about emergency money. And so we've been through a rather blunt assessment of the...
Sorry, Michael.
No, it's good, because as you say, it doesn't help to have your head in the sand about this kind of thing. Because if an emergency happens, the very nature of an emergency is that it's going to happen quickly and you're going to need to find money fast, generally. And you're going to want to be covered. But if you are in the position of this is really the first time you're considering it and actively considering, what do I do in the case of an emergency, and you don't have that money set aside, what do you do? Is it a case of sitting down with your budget that we've talked about before? And I think in a few weeks we should do another budget episode, because I feel like we are overdue for a bit of a budget reboot, really. But do you sit down, look at the budget and figure out kind of where you can kind of cut some money or save some money for that? But where does the money come from? How do you change your thinking, and how do you just make it materialize out of somewhere?
You're actually on the money. So that is the first step, is you sit down with your budget and go through your living expenses and look at, okay, well, this is my current living expenses. How much can I afford to save on a regular basis to put into a separate dedicated savings account purely to build up my emergency money?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might discover, look, I can only afford to put aside $200 a month. And obviously that's going to, if your number is, say, for example, 10,000, it's going to take a long time to save $10,000 worth of emergency money. So what I would recommend you do is go back to your budget and look at what can you cut down or cut out on a temporary basis to free up. So it's not $200 a month you can save. It's actually $450 per month. So you can then immediately transfer that $450 each time you get paid into a separate dedicated savings account where it can accumulate, hopefully earn some interest now, and grow over time. And you could religiously do that. And then if that's still too slow and your number is, a substantial amount that you now need and want it, and that's the other thing, is you'll know intuitively because you'll go, yep, that is what I want as emergency money because that's what feels good to me. And as I say, will help you sleep well at night. Mm-hmm. So you would go, okay, that's going to take me too long. Well, then what are the additional things you can do in your life to earn extra money?
Oh, hustles. Side hustles.
That's where the Queen of Hustle podcast comes in. So what can you do? Are there things that you can declutter around the home and sell to the circular economy to give you some nice cash injection that can be put into that savings account? Is there a promotion at work that you can go for? Have you done your taxes and looked at any tax returns that might be outstanding? And you're looking very guilty right now. Michael, that might be some money to kickstart your emergency money or boost your emergency money account. Are there things you can do to upskill? Is there some freelancing work? I spoke to someone who plays the piano and they've started on the side teaching school children how to play the piano. And she's making a lot of extra cash on the side. So that, for example, is money that you could put towards that to help you get to that $30,000, $35,000 emergency money number, whatever it may be, a lot faster. And you're giggling and I don't know why.
It's just because it seemed like you went to great lengths to avoid saying the word pianist.
Pianist. Okay. What did I say? Piano player.
Yep.
Oh, no, that's probably because my brain didn't actually have the ability this morning to articulate the word pianist.
I'm sorry. I think I just went straight to a...
I think I have the gutted mind. I think it's actually you. And Toy says it's the quiet ones you've got to watch out for.
Well, let's move on very, very quickly from this. That money, where do you keep it? You mentioned just open another bank account. Is it just sitting in a separate savings account? And can you do anything with it while it is there?
Two great questions. I'm so glad you asked this because they're really important and my answer is very, very valuable. So listen up, everyone. So if you have a mortgage, and I'm going to assume that your goal is to pay off that mortgage as quickly as possible because you hate mortgage payments like me, there may be benefit in keeping that emergency money either in an offset account or in your redraw facility.
Yep.
Now, again, this is not personal advice, strategic advice, or product advice. So I'm going to say speak to your advisor, speak to your accountant, speak to your bank to see if this actually is an option and if it will work for you. But the benefit of doing that is at least you've got that emergency money there, but it's helping reduce your interest cost. And if you're maintaining your mortgage repayments, it may even help you pay off your home loan faster. Obviously, full disclosure, and it's stating the obvious, if you were to use that emergency money, that effect or that benefit wears off or reduces completely. That's obviously common sense. But that can be an incredibly efficient way or place to hold that emergency money. If you don't have a mortgage, you might want to look at opening up a savings account that is an online-based one so that you're ideally not paying any fees. You hopefully get some bonus interest as well so that money is kind of working for you.
Those are often the ones that if you are not making any withdrawals but you're making regular deposits that they will pay you a slightly higher interest rate, isn't it?
Yeah, you get a little bonus.
Yeah.
And I always recommend whichever way you go, whether it be a redraw, offset or a separate savings account, I always recommend you nickname it My Emergency Money.
Is that a psychological thing? So that you
very much so.
Part of it feels almost a little bit counterintuitive when we're talking about making your money work for you, to have a big chunk of money sitting there when you're like, oh, surely couldn't I don't know, buy shares with that? And even just thinking this, I know this is wrong, but say put it into a term deposit with a higher interest rate attached to it. But I say that knowing that is locked up then. Yep. And it is locked up for 6 months or 2 years or 5 years, depending on how long the term is on that term deposit. So that even I can tell without needing to look at the eyebrow raising or anything like that, that is not a good idea.
Look, that is your second question. Can you do something with that money? General advice, the answer is no, because things happen out of the blue, and the biggest issue is liquidity and volatility. So say, for example, your number is, after doing this exercise, and it would be really cool if you actually do this exercise and come back and share with us, maybe what your number might be. But if you, say, decide to put that $35,000 in shares and that's your emergency money, now it's your money, it's your business, you do whatever you want. But as we all know, the share market is incredibly volatile. What if that $35,000 drops down to $28,000, which is part of the natural beast of the share market, and something happens and you need $22,000? You're going to be crystallizing a large loss of that share portfolio to fix your emergency. And you would not necessarily be happy with that. So that is why it's important that emergency money typically stay in something that's very conservative, safe and secure, within reason. And of course, you can quickly and easily access it. And the thing also with a term deposit, a lot of people don't realize, if you want to try and break that term deposit, there are break fees.
Yeah.
So
that was a very bad example, but an example of basically what is not a good idea. I'm very, very hesitant to say this because I'm wary of making myself sound like I do all of the wrong things. But
you don't. I promise you don't.
The emergency money, we do have emergency money, and we have had that for about, what episode are we up to now? 17 episodes. We've had it now for about 14 episodes. Because in one of our earlier episodes, we were talking about the value of emergency money. And we're like, you know what? This is a really good idea. And so we went away and had a bit of a look and a talk about it. And we put some money aside and managed to save some money. We've used a portion of that. And we used it to achieve another financial goal, which was to clear all credit cards and just go to absolute zero. Then reduced the limit on the credit cards down to something like $500 or something.
Wow.
So it is only there as basically as a backup.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm.
How did you feel when you sorted your emergency money out?
Really good. That was fantastic to have that money sitting there. And part of it was also knowing that we were likely to have roof repairs and various things coming up. So I know that's kind of getting into a grey area of we were planning for an emergency that we know is probably going to come. So it feels like I'm not going to get the gold star that I was hoping for.
No, you do. I think that's great. Like, you're being very hard on yourself and putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
It's a bronze star.
It's a gold star. That's great. And
sweet.
you now know that you use some of that emergency money or about to get the roof fixed. You know that when you can, prioritize rebuilding that emergency money back up to what you should.
That's the last question I had for you, which is when you do spend it, what's your plan then? Do you kind of reactivate whatever those savings measures and things that you did? Because once you hit your target, you don't necessarily need to keep on adding to it. So say your target is 35,000, you get to the 35,000, then you can shift your focus to your other financial goals.
100%. And that is why I always say to people before they start investing, make sure you've got emergency money and the right amount of emergency money for you. So absolutely, that is correct.
Okay. Look, I think we've covered emergency money fairly comprehensively. You've given me a lot.
Sorry for being so brutal, but I just I am of no value if I sugarcoat this.
No.
And as I said, the average Australian can last 3.5 weeks before they are broke, starting to get into debt, and then leaning on the government for support.
Yeah.
And no one needs to be in that situation if they can avoid it.
No, if you want financial freedom and financial independence, this just it seems like it makes a lot of sense.
It's part of the work. It's part of the steps.
Okay, so we've really kind of covered that I was hoping for a magic calculation. There isn't one necessarily. It is a case of assessing your own expenses, assessing kind of what your cost of living is, what all your various expenses are, but then some of the things that can potentially offset that number that you need to be aiming for in terms of your annual leave or your sick leave or your insurances, your income protection insurance, what your various responsibilities and commitments are, the stability of your job, and you need to land on a number that you are comfortable with. That there's no kind of hard and fast rule for this, but it's just got to be something that is going to help you sleep at night. Once you've worked out that number, the next challenge is reaching that number in terms of the savings. So you're looking at putting money aside, looking at your budget, where you can cut back in order to kind of funnel money towards your emergency fund. If you're not going to be able to achieve it in the kind of time frame that you want to, or you want to get there faster, look at side hustles, look at kind of upskilling or going after promotions or anything, but really kind of treat it as a priority so that you give yourself that safety net of having the emergency money as soon as you possibly can. When you've got it, that it's an emergency fund, it is meant for emergencies. Don't just dip into it whenever you want, and label
new
it.
laptop.
Yeah, exactly. That's not really an emergency, and that you label it as an emergency fund so that
to remind you, keep you accountable, and to also respect it. It's there for your protection, not to be blown.
Yeah, and if you do spend it, then build it up again as quickly as you can, using those same methods that you did before.
Absolutely.
That have clearly worked for you if you were able to get to that in the first place. Yep. Right, I think we've covered that pretty well. How do we find you, Canna?
Probably the fastest and easiest place to get in contact with me is through Instagram at SugarMamaTV or at Canna Campbell Official. But it's me behind that messaging system. So if you have any questions, just reach out there.
Wonderful. And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business news podcast. Thank you very much for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and please leave us a review as well. We've been getting some fantastic reviews lately, Canna.
And some fantastic DMs, the kindest feedback, so welcoming and encouraging. It's been absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it is really wonderful to see. So thank you very much for leaving us those reviews and for providing that feedback. Next week, we are talking about a topic that I know you are very, very passionate about. Frugal February.
Oh, yeah. My love-hate passion of Frugal February.
It is going to be an exciting episode. Do not miss it.